Hello, this is Heather Massey, and this is my presentation on the usability test summary and website recommendations for the SeminoleTribune.org. The Seminole Tribune website has a nice aesthetic look with a simple and clean background. In current form, there are several strengths. There is strong use of shapes and vibrant photos, and the site is responsive in design and effectively uses the navigation bar. I have a couple suggestions that will take this already well-designed website to the next level. The first suggestion is to add some more selections to the navigation bar. And the second suggestion is to work on the accessibility features of the site. I will now begin my site analysis. As I mentioned, there are several strengths for this website. The website has a very clean, simplistic look with a light background. They do a great job of using vibrant photos, and I like the touch of using this carousel. There is also great use of shapes, and the information is organized in a nice format. They do a good use of hierarchy in their typography, and a critical feature, it is responsive in design. Another nice thing is the navigation bar is at the top of each page of the website. And if you spend any time on this site, you will see the site is very informative and there's a great variety of topics covered. However, there are a couple opportunities to make this already good website great. One would be the navigation bar. As I mentioned, I think there needs to be just a couple additional options added to it. Another opportunity is to make some improvements to the accessibility. I used the wave evaluation tool to help me with this. And from that, I found that there's some improvements needed on the contrast of the typography, basically either making some of the fonts a little bit bigger or darker on a light background, that sort of thing. And also there's some missing alternative text. And alternative text is important to low vision users and people whose website is blocking the photos for whatever reason. Also, I took a look at the website on a smartphone, and it does seem that the site is using a mobile first design. When I looked at it on a smartphone, you will see it was reduced to one column. And also, there was good use of the hamburger menu. This is critical because, as you will see from Mr. Luke Robolewski, smartphone sales surpassed PC sales back in 2011, and that was 10 years ago. And also, smartphone users spend a lot of time on their phone each day, probably about 30 minutes per day. I want to let you know that I did a usability test summary on the site. And for this test summary, I selected 3 users to participate: Bailey Massey, John Sparks, and Don Swinford. 2 of the users were female and one was male. One user was over 55 years of age, and 2 users were in their early 20s. 2 users used a PC that they normally use on a daily basis, and one used a recent model of a smartphone. We conducted the test via Zoom. At the beginning of the test, I introduced the site to them. I reassured them that we're not testing them, we're testing the site and how easy it is to get around on it. I started out with 2 questions to kind of get a feel for their experience. I asked each of them to rank their experience with using computers or smartphones on a level of 1 to 5, with 5 being very experienced and 1 being not experienced at all. All 3 users ranked themselves as very experienced. I also talked to them briefly about why they use the internet. And they use the internet for just about everything, it seemed like. I remember Dawn saying she uses it for work and just everything, social media, paying bills, doing research. And Bailey and John gave a lot of the same reasons as well. They said probably they spend most of their time doing research. After that, I asked the users their general thoughts and impressions of the first site, what they thought when they first visited the site, and what they thought about the information and the features and how they were laid out, and who they thought the target audience for the site was. I gave each of them 4 tasks to complete on the site. One was about finding out some information about a hiring event, and I also asked them to find out some information about the editors and reporters at the Seminole Tribune, and a task of finding out the score for the FGCU Florida game, and also how would I contact the Seminole Tribune. After we went through the task, I just spent a little more time with each of them, and I asked them, some final thoughts. Did it take more or less time than expected to find what they were looking for on the site? And would they recommend the site to others? Going over the results a little bit, as I mentioned earlier, they use the internet a lot and for common reasons. There was some variance between users as to which tasks were more challenging. There was also some consistencies. The softball score was by far the easiest task for each of them. Differences were Dawn had to search a little bit longer for the hiring event information, and Bailey found that pretty easy, but she had a little more information with the contact, finding the contact information. And then John, who was on the smartphone versus a PC, it seemed like each search was just a little bit easier for him, which is great. I mean, that's using the mobile first design aspect. After that, we went over some closing comments. They each had a positive impression of the site. They thought there was a lot of useful information on the site. They thought, the site is quite an asset for people that live in the area. The people are part of the Seminole community. And they each said they would recommend it to at least people that live in that area or are part of that community. And then, after talking with them and after reviewing the site and some information about web design, there's just, some information that I wanted to go over as far as a redesign strategy. As I mentioned, 4 tasks were given to each of the users to complete, and one was about the hiring event at the Seminole Hotel. From that task, um, as I mentioned, Dawn had a little trouble finding it. So, one of the suggestions I have in relations to that task is to add, some more selections to the menu option. Um, the Also the second task of finding out information about the editors and reporters at the Seminole, it seemed like for a couple of them that took a little bit longer than expected. Now, there was a red font used to make the reporter's name a little more visible, and that popped up more on the smartphone, which was interesting. And as I mentioned, the score, that was easy, and the contact was easier for a couple of the users, but one of the users did have a little trouble there. The other redesign strategy that I'd want to pull in is the accessibility improvements. Um, as I mentioned, there needs to be a little more contrast with the typography, um, you know, boosting up the size of some of the fonts. A lot of times they recommend 16 or 18 for the website, sometimes using bold. Also, a lot of times using a dark font, maybe black for the text. And including the missing alternative text. That comes in easy for people that are using screen readers or low vision users, or people that have high security on their website. But in general, that is my presentation of the website. Um, as I said, it is an already well designed website, just a few small tweaks, and I think it'll take it to the next level of being a great website. Thank you for your time.